Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to our West Coast friends, and welcome to the Summer 2023 Revenova 7.9 release webinar. My name is Dave Romanchuk, and I'm the Director of Product Management here at Revenova TMS. And today I'm joined in this webinar by two of our all-star product managers, Liam Purcell and Alyssa Norcross.
Hello.
Today we're going to be taking you through an overview of all of the new features and functions that are present in the 7.9 release, and focusing in particular on some of the newest features that we're most excited about. To start the discussion, I'll be going through a high-level PowerPoint, hopefully painless, that touches on most of the new product features, and then I'll be handing it off to Liam and Alyssa for some more in-depth demos of the features we're most excited about. So just a bit of housekeeping. As a reminder, as we've done in previous webinars, you can find all of the recorded webinars on the Revenova Learning Center, the RLC, and at the end of this webinar, we'll be sending out the link to the recording and the presentation deck after the event. Also, as a reminder, throughout the webinar, if you do have questions that come up, please post those questions in the Q&A forum as indicated on the Ring Central webinar controls. Meeting the team again, in case you guys have forgotten what a good-looking group you have here at Revenova. Dave, Alyssa, and Liam are going to be your presenters here today. We're very excited to get into the demo here, so without further ado, let's go. So just to highlight, this is a major product release for us. As I mentioned, we're very excited about it, and we have, in fact, over 75 new product items included in this 7.9 release. And of those 75 plus items, some of the items that we're going to review today include both the enhancements and the new features as part of this review. The enhancements are related to the rate entry, lane, zone, and RFP objects, significant enhancements to the Rate IQ tool, the carrier markup groups, customer portal, and lastly, the SMC3 API. Then in addition to all of the enhancements for the existing functionality, we also have new features that we're very excited about, and those three that we'll touch on today are the customer invoicing automation, performance IQ, and barcode generator. So the first enhancement on the list is the rate entry and lane/zone enhancements. And what you'll notice is throughout this presentation, I have asterisks on the slides, which indicate that these are actually features that Liam and Alyssa will be diving into the details more for a live demo at the end of my PowerPoint slides here. So just to hit the highlights, the first item on the list here is the new lane match priority that can be overridden at a rate entry level. So in the past, when you've entered a lane, there's been a standard default match priority, which determines the priority that a given lane is given based on the rate entry. And with this new enhancement, you'll have the ability to override that match priority. In addition, for rate entries, we now support a per handling unit position rate method. And also, the rate entries created from the RFP rate entry related list will maintain the RFP context. Lastly, on the zone entry aspect, we've enhanced these to allow for mixed zone entry types for any combination of country, state, city or state, zip 3, zip 5, postal code, and/or location. And we've also enabled the ability to include and exclude geographies from a zone for these lane matching purposes. So you can imagine you can get extremely creative and extremely creative with the different ways that you can set up these zone entries. On the RFP front, the RFP banner now supports accessorial rate entry uploads, API rate method uploads, SMC3 LTL API field uploads, upload of customer and carrier rate entries for the customer RFP, and upload of multiple carrier services in a single RFP. So a significant enhancement to the existing RFP functionality based on a lot of feedback that we've gotten from you guys as our customer base. The next item, which will be touched on in one of the live demos, is the Rate IQ enhancements. And for those of you that heard us at FreightWaves, we're actually very excited about the enhancements to this tool for this release. So just to start, the Rate IQ calculation tool now supports the match priority and lane fields. The match priority is defaulted to the lane's value but can be manually overridden. And the lowest match priority rate calculation that also matches on the load will be used in the widget. So what does that mean? In the past, for the Rate IQ calculations, you really only had the mode as the selection for which criteria would be driving the calculations on a load-by-load basis. But with the lane and the match priority new fields, you can now define different calculation rules based on both the lane and then also the overriding match priority. The rate calculation rule setup page has been replaced with the Lightning Web component, so that's what you're seeing on the screen here. And the last item that we're probably most excited about is that RateIQ now supports custom data sources. So the custom data sources can either be imported and deleted via either a web service or a CSV uploader. So you can think of things like we've had multiple different partners ask about potential integrations to certain AI tools that can feed data into RateIQ. And so with this new publicly exposed API, you can now push these data sources into your RateIQ calculations. Then on the other side of things, if you have just a simple CSV export that perhaps you get sent to you by belonging to a particular shipper consortium or something to that effect, you can use that CSV upload tool to upload those rates into the rate calculation rule. Next one, kind of a small but important new feature, and that's the overriding of the customer invoice document requirements. So as it says, this new feature will allow users to override the invoice document requirements on an invoice-by-invoice basis. So as many of you know, we have a significant or a well-developed integration with HubTran, now TriumphPay, that allows you to identify all of the particular documents that might be required from a POD perspective for the customer. But when you have instances where perhaps the load didn't move, maybe it's a TONU invoice that you're sending to the customer, there wasn't really a way to override the invoice document requirements, and so this new checkbox allows you to do that. Now moving on to one of our new features that we're excited about, this is Performance IQ, and this is another one that will be live demoed later in the meeting. As it says, the Performance IQ is a new component available on the home page, and it's basically used as an overall monitoring widget for all of the Salesforce org limits and your TMS batch jobs. It's capable of displaying current status of all of your org limits, sending out email alerts when the org limits are exceeded, and also sending out email alerts for when certain batch job fails. The next enhancement on the list we have is all around container tracking enhancements. A new field called the master bill of lading number on the load and container objects can now be used to initiate container tracking. The vessel the container is on is now captured by the Project 44 status updates. The UN location code of ports is now captured on the container route information field. And lastly, the container console now supports multi-row field updates. So you can do multiple updates from that widget now. The next very exciting new feature is our customer invoicing automation. And all of this revolves around fully automating the system for as few touches as possible. So with this new feature, it gives you the ability to auto-generate and send customer invoices that have been added to the TMS, which is performed by a new custom batch job. The customer billing settings are available on the transportation profile of the customer, and these new settings include a setting for indicating that this customer should receive auto-sent invoices. You can define the day of week or a daily billing setting. You can define the billing email attachment format, whether that be a PDF or a PDF with the CSV. And lastly, with that CSV option, you also have the option to define the explicit CSV export file definition, meaning if one customer has certain requirements for their CSV, you can define it in one way, and then you can set up a different CSV for a different customer in another way. The next enhancement on the list is the SMC3 LTL API enhancement. So a lot of significant enhancements to the SMC3 API that you'll see here. Admittedly, I'm no SMC3 expert, and Liam and Alyssa will talk to you more about this, or I suppose we all will moving forward. But the pieces that I wanted to highlight in this presentation are, in particular, the freight charge itemization rating and invoicing enhancements. So the first one on the list is the tariff minimum. So now we capture that tariff minimum for customer and carrier quotes. Secondly, the freight charges and freight charges after discount are also captured on customer quotes. And then thirdly, the SMC3 minimum charge, floor charge, TMS rate entry maximum, and rate entry minimum will be captured on both the customer and the carrier quote freight charge items when they're applicable. So if all this seems Greek to you, not to worry, but for those that do use SMC3 and are heavy users of that, you're going to be very excited about this new feature. So for the customer invoices that are associated with these SMC3 quotes, the fields listed in these prior bullets will be shown on the invoice PDF, so that's very important for customers that receive these kinds of invoices. And then also there will be text indicators on the invoice PDF that will show if one of these special rates was applied from SMC3. And then lastly, for customer invoices that are associated with the SMC3 quotes that are sent via EDI, the deficit charge will now be captured as a charge item as well as the items listed in the prior bullet. So again, a very significant uplift to the SMC3 invoicing and quoting features here. And then lastly, in regards to the SMC3 integration, in the context of that API's rating, users can set up rate entries to make discounts behave like surcharges. So unlike ordinary discounts where you're obviously reducing a freight charge based on a discount, you can actually now create negative discounts which will increase your freight charges. And this is important when it comes to historical negotiations that some customers have with their customers based on these tariff rates where you need to be able to assign negative discounts to align the historical contracts. Next we have the quote and invoice cost detail enhancements. So another asterisk here indicating that we'll be diving into this one a little bit further. But at a high level, basically the freight and fuel surcharge fields that are captured on the customer and carrier quotes, those are now going to be available on the customer and carrier invoices. So that includes the unit price, quantity, and the notes. These fields are also passed in the outbound EDI 210 customer invoice transactions. And all of these fields are actually now configurable to show or to hide these details on the various PDFs that are created within the system. So on the right-hand side, you have a snapshot of these additional new features, including the unit, the quantity and price, and then any notes. And as I mentioned, it's configurable whether you want to show all of these details or not. The next significant enhancement is around carrier markups. So as it says, carrier markups are now defined with configurable item level granularity, and different markups can be applied for each customer quote cost item. So what that means is you can have different markups based on freight, fuel, and accessorial all individually. You can also define blanket fuel surcharge or accessorial specific markups. And then the third bullet here, the carrier markup cascade from customer specific to global TP markups function independently for each cost item. So you might have a global markup for freight, for example, and then a customer specific markup for fuel. Next, the SMC3 only fields have been added for each valid value of freight charge applied. And lastly, the stored rates and carrier markups can be used concurrently within the same quote. Stored rates take precedence when there is a match. So what does that mean? Again, we'll dive into the details of this one, but just to point out in the snapshot here, you'll see you can have on a single quote both rate entries that are auto-calculated for this particular quote and markups associated with the same quote. So kind of a mix of both rate entry and carrier markups. Next, we have some customer portal enhancements. The first being you can now request a faster transit time. So we've added a new button to the customer portal quote selection page, which allows the user, when they're looking through their quotes, to request a faster transit time as required. And based on the selection of that button, then they'd be given a modal that pops up and asks them to enter their requested delivery date and then perhaps some comments that they might have for that request. In addition, we have some new threshold parameters that have been added to the portal section of the customer transportation profile records. And what these thresholds work to achieve is essentially if the portal user that's entering loads in the system, if they've entered a load that exceeds these thresholds, then the system will prevent them from tendering the load to the carrier through the portal. And what happens is the user, or I should say the system prevents the user from tendering the load, which is typically done when you have LTL loads that potentially could fall in between an LTL versus a volume LTL load. So the thresholds are kind of there to protect you from exceeding the thresholds. The next new feature that we have is the barcode generation, another one that we'll be demoing here. And Revenova is now integrated with Tekkit, which enables generation of barcodes. There is a new section a new settings subtab on the carrier transportation profile, which contains all of the available settings for defining these barcodes. So if you're familiar with barcodes, then most of these fields should make sense, but they're essentially items like the barcode type, code 128, the size of the barcodes, and then the length, width, and height, and things of that nature. These barcode images that can be generated are included in both the BOL and on the shipping label documents. And then the last slide before we dive into the actual demos are just some high-level hitters of the other enhancements that didn't warrant their own slide, but were nonetheless important to make sure we highlighted in this webinar. So I'm just going to run through these quickly, and then we'll move on to the demo. So the first one, Lightning email templates are now supported. So if you're familiar with the Salesforce Lightning email templates, those are effectively slightly more powerful email templates that you can create within the system. And once you've created them, you can in fact use them in the TMS as your standard rate con or invoice email templates. Next, accessorial exclusions can now be defined for specific carriers and carrier services to prevent the assignment of loads with specific accessorials to those carriers or carrier services. So if there are particular accessorials that a carrier tells you, hey, I don't move loads with this particular accessorial, then you can define that exclusion and they will be excluded from your carrier search, and the system will also prevent you from assigning a load to that carrier. In that same vein, you can also create carrier accessorial exclusion exceptions defined for specific customers. So again, as the example would be, a carrier normally doesn't support a particular accessorial, but for a perhaps big ticket customer, they want to win that customer's business, so you can assign that exception for that particular customer. The next bullet is the TMS is now integrated to Blue Yonder. So customers using Blue Yonder will be able to create loads in Revenova via an API. You'll be able to return rates for created loads to Blue Yonder. And lastly, you'll be able to tender loads in Revenova via API. Next, the rate and tariff minimum fields have been added to the pricing workbench CSV export. A new company type field is now populated on the TP for the carrier monitoring APIs. A containers tab has been added. And then a few of these other ones, even though they're short bullet points, are actually pretty significant impacts to the release. So I might dwell a little longer on some of these, most notably this one that I'm dwelling on right now, which is the majority of customer and carrier-facing documents generated by the TMS will be visible in portal components without the need to manually share. So some of you may have noticed in previous releases and with some of the transition to files and things of that nature, there was a slight limitation that required you to actually manually share files with portal users in order for them to see the documents in the portals that you've created. So what we've done in this release is we've actually, by default, exposed all of the documents when they get saved in the system to allow them to be visible within the portal. So it removes that extra step of manually needing to share these documents. The next one, the location field for the stops on the load detail component now uses account field sets, TMS4 and TMS5. So essentially just a more flexible way to search on location accounts in your stops when you're trying to find a particular account, either based on address or name or perhaps an account number. Another big significant item, even though it's one bullet point here, is the inbound EDI 210 transactions. So as you all are aware, with our existing EDI partners, you can certainly receive EDI 210s, or I'm sorry, you can certainly send EDI 210s from Revenova to your customers. And with this release, we're now enabling the reverse flow wherein carriers can actually send you EDI 210s into Revenova, which will then create vendor invoices in the system for you. Next, we have stored rate accessorials will be calculated on the FQA for customer and carrier quotes, even if there is no freight stored rate. Inbound EDI 204 and outbound EDI 214 transactions now support appointment time ranges. In the past, it was just a single appointment time. The BOL PDF now supports 50-plus stop loads. The EDI status icon on the load detail LWC now supports many stop loads. And then optional configuration setting to allow line item, item number, and item description to appear at the bottom of the new load entry page. And lastly, the zip code is now an additional search option field in the customer and location search in the new load creation widget. So with all of that said, at this point we're going to hand the ball over to Liam and Alyssa for the demos. So Liam and Alyssa, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Dave. I'll start it off by showing you our Performance IQ tool, which Dave mentioned previously. As he alluded to, Performance IQ is meant to give you clear insights into how you're performing relative to the Salesforce limits in your org and how your batch jobs are running. As you can see on the page, there are two tabs, one for limits and one for batch jobs. On your limits tab, you are seeing a dynamic bar which shows you how close you are to running up against those Salesforce limits. And on the batch jobs tab, you're seeing which batch jobs are running and, if they are running, when they're scheduled to run next. For a peek behind the curtain, first on this settings modal, you see the general settings tab. And on there you see the notification email field. This is where you are going to put the email address for your user who you want to receive a notification in the event that one of these limits or batch jobs needs some special attention. More on that in a second. Diving into the limit settings tab, you can see that you have the ability to display or hide certain limits based on whether they are relevant to you. In addition, you have the ability to monitor certain limits, which, again, going back to that general settings notification email field, is where you decide when that user is receiving an email. In the notification threshold column, you have the ability to decide a custom threshold when that user is going to be notified that a limit is a little too close for comfort to that Salesforce org limit. Moving over to the batch job settings tab, you can again hide batch jobs that aren't relevant to you or decide which batch jobs you want to monitor. Now the batch job monitoring works a little differently. You'll receive an email when a batch job doesn't run as expected, has been running too long, or has passed the expected run date and is not running. In summary, Performance IQ is going to push you email notifications, and for a quick glimpse at what that looks like, here is the email you'll be seeing from Performance IQ, as you can see, pointing out that it has detected the following issues. At the top, there's an org limit that has exceeded the notification threshold that I mentioned previously, and listed below it are each of the batch jobs that are not scheduled to run. Again, calling out to you that these are the things that may not be running according to your process. Performance IQ is designed to give you peace of mind in knowing that you have a clear understanding of where you are relative to those Salesforce org limits and how your batch jobs are running. Now I'll throw it over to Alyssa to talk about our barcode feature.
Thanks, Liam. So we developed the barcode so that carriers can scan the bill of lading documents and packing slips to enable quicker transit tracking, as well as not having to have the driver individually scan and sticker your freight for you. So you can have those pre-signed pros in the system, and then the barcodes generated all through the system. So as Dave mentioned earlier, on the credentials page, you will see Tech IT as a partner. So once you enter in all your credentials, you can go to the carrier transportation profile for the carrier that you want to generate that barcode for by clicking on the settings tabs and then scrolling down to barcode. You'll be able to select the barcode type. This is the required field in order to enable the feature. So currently we support code 128 and code 39. These are the two most commonly used barcodes by the LTL carriers. That is the only field that is required. So you can leave all other barcode specification fields blank, and we'll use the general standard specifications for that barcode type to produce that barcode for you. If, for whatever reason, your carrier has specific requirements, like they want the special characters like a hyphen removed, or they want to actually print out the barcode pro number underneath, you would just click on the show text and then the text align, so it would be the center bottom. So I'll go ahead and save that here and then pop into a load. In order to generate the barcode, we need a carrier service assigned to the load. So since I just set up the barcode specifications for AAA Cooper, I went ahead and assigned this load to AAA Cooper, and then I added a pro number. So you can see here this pro number has a hyphen in it, so just remember that when I generate the actual file. So on the document tab, files, you'll see that there is a barcode file. You don't need to do anything with this. This is just here so that if you have custom documents, you can generate the barcode and put that on your custom documents as well. For demo purposes, I'll go ahead and pull up our Revenova bill of lading, and you can see that barcode is printed on the BOL at the top with the hyphen removed according to the specifications, as well as the pro number printed in the bottom center. This same file will print on the shipping label as well, again, so that the carrier can scan and track your freight throughout transit. That's the barcode feature. So again, it enables the carriers to easily scan your bill of lading and shipping label documents throughout the shipment life cycle. I'll transfer back to Liam so he can talk about the Rate IQ.
Thanks, Alyssa. As Dave mentioned earlier, we're really excited about the Rate IQ enhancements we have coming in 7.9. The first of which being the addition of lane and match priority to the rate calculation. As Dave mentioned, this gives you the ability to differentiate the rate calculation rules according to the lane of the load. For example, if you wanted to differentiate between the US to US rate calculation and the US to Canada rate calculation, you now have that ability in 7.9. Second, and most notably, we added the ability to import custom data sources into Rate IQ and use them in these rate calculations. As Dave mentioned previously, there are two ways to upload that data into Rate IQ. The first being a CSV upload using our custom tool. In order to do that, simply go to your rate calculation, click on Data, and click on the Excel logo to download the file format. I've got my file format already ready here. And as you can see, I've got a handful of loads in here over the past couple of weeks, going from Chicago to Boston at a variety of price points. Now, once I have all this ready, a couple of key steps here. First, be sure to delete these top 3 rows. Next, once that's done, be sure to save it as a CSV file as opposed to an Excel file. I'm going to replace the one I already have, and now I'm ready to go. So I can close out here, go back to the file upload, and click Upload Files, find the file I just finished, and it's as easy as that. In a couple of seconds, you'll receive a success message, and eventually you'll receive an email saying your rows were uploaded. And the result, if you jump into TMS admin and go to your Rate IQ rate sources, should be that those Boston or Chicago to Boston loads at the variety of price points are now in the system and ready to be used as a custom data source in your rate calculation rules. The other way that we can pull in custom data into Rate IQ is via API. In order to show you how that works, I'll open up Postman here. And as you can see in the body, I have a couple more custom source records ready to be imported into the system. There's one from July 8th and another from July 9th at a couple of different price points. And I want these into Rate IQ so that they can be part of that rate calculation. So I will send those in via API. Got my success message. I'm going to jump back into the TMS and go back to my rate sources. And when I refresh, you should see those records from the 8th and the 9th ready to be included in your rate calculation rules. As Dave mentioned previously, what this means for you is you can now use those external pricing tools or your legacy TMS data in Rate IQ. So now all of that rate insight data is going to come in one place to your users instead of having to jump around onto different platforms. Now I'll pass it over to Alyssa to show you our new markup enhancements.
Thanks, Liam. Carrier markup enhancement is quite a large one, so bear with me while I go through this, but it's a very exciting one. So, as Dave alluded to, we now have the flexibility, similarly to the rate entries, to create separate markups for freight, fuel, and accessorials. We've also introduced the ability to do something that we're calling kind of a blanket markup. So for fuel and accessorials, you're able to select an accessorial, and then if you'd like, find a specific accessorial such as a liftgate pickup and change the markup strategy for that. So you can charge a little bit extra for certain accessorials that might be a little bit more handling and therefore you want to charge more for it. Or you can create an accessorial that has no accessorial selected in the lookup field. Essentially a blanket markup for all accessorials. You can do the same thing for fuel. We've also added some new markup fields, so effective date and expiration date, as well as the minimum load weight. So you can create a markup for something that's 0 to say 500 pounds, or you could create a separate markup for a shipment that's 500 to say 1,000 pounds. Again, just offering increased flexibility on how you're structuring your customer pricing. We've also introduced SMC3 specific freight markups. So you can specifically add markup for a minimum rate differently than say the floor or the tariff rate. Again, just allowing you for more flexibility. Six different carrier quotes. On the customer quote side, you can see that there is a customer quote number. On this one, it's 113. And then we also have a new carrier quote lookup field. The reason that this field is populated with the carrier quote is because we use that carrier quote to generate the customer quote using those markup strategies. So, as I hop between the different carrier quotes, you can see the customer quote number will change and then also that carrier quote number. Also, if I scroll down here to the pricing notes section, we've added lookups to those specific markups. So you can see what markup was used for the liftgate pickup, as well as the one for the freight charges and the fuel and surcharge. If I go ahead and click on this fuel surcharge markup, it'll bring me to the individual markup, and you can see that this is a global markup group. We included some enhancements to the cascade logic that we have for markups so that you can do a global markup for, say, fuel and accessorials, so that all of your customers are charged at a global level for the fuel or accessorial, but then giving you the flexibility for the freight to charge your customer specific markups. Again, just allowing for more flexibility there. To show you what a load with the stored rate and a markup strategy in one customer quote, I'll pull up this load, which you can see we have a stored rate of liftgate. Again, that's just going to allow you to say for liftgates for this customer on that lane, I'm always going to charge them this flat $150. But for the freight and fuel, I want to apply a markup, so it's going to be a flat percentage. Lastly, we added a pretty nifty little button here on the carrier quote where you can just select add to customer quote, and it'll search the system for any applicable markups that meet that liftgate accessorial. So you can see for this one, the margin that you'll gain for the liftgate delivery is $9. With that, I'll transition back to Liam so he can talk about our automated invoicing feature.
Thanks, Alyssa. That stuff's really cool. Another cool feature we have coming in 7.9 is the ability to automatically invoice customers when your invoices are ready to go. Now, in practice, this means that we've now added a customer invoice generation job, which is designed to go through all of the customer invoices in your system, identify the invoices that are ready to be sent, and send them according to the billing method on the invoice. To show you how this works, I will first jump to our transportation profile page. Now, I want to mention that you have the ability to exclude customers from this automatic process. This checkbox that says auto send invoices, when true, will include that customer in our automated generation process. But when it's unchecked, the invoice process runs exactly as it does today. If it's true as it's checked here, the process runs as follows. I have a couple of invoices sitting here for my customer, Denver Deli Meats. Now, these invoices are approved, but as you can see, they're not sent. There's no date sent in the date sent column, and the status is approved as opposed to invoiced. These two invoices are ready to go, however, with a billing method of email, so I'm going to initiate the job and send them out. In order to do so, I'm simply going to jump back to my home page, find my customer invoice generation job, and click Run Now. You'll get the success message that the job is initiated, and then you just have to sit back and watch as the job runs through your system, finds those approved invoices with the invoice date of today, remember that for later, and sends them out according to the billing method on the invoice. I'll jump back to my list view here, and now you can see there's a date sent in the date sent column, and the status is invoiced. Now, one thing I want to mention, I just alluded a second ago to the fact that the invoice date must be today. One of the cool features that Dave mentioned earlier is that you can decide when this job runs and also when the job applies to a certain customer. So back to the TP here, you can see that on my Revenova transportation profile, I have a customer invoice day set to Wednesday. So if I were to find a couple of Revenova loads, here's one for example, and if I were to jump into the FQA and say, I know this customer quote's ready to be invoiced, so I'm going to set the billing status to approved for billing and hit save, and that's going to go ahead and create that invoice. And what will happen is the system knows to pay attention to this customer invoice day. So instead of setting that invoice date to today, when I refresh my list, you can see I now have an invoice sitting there for that load for next Wednesday. This gives you the ability to invoice your customers according to their specifications. So the process is automatic, but also extremely flexible to meet your current needs. In addition, you have the ability to schedule the job according to how often you want those invoices to be sent out. Here on the TMS admin page under invoice processing, you have the ability to decide the first run of the day and how often. You can run it as often as an hour or as infrequently as 24 hours. In conclusion, our 7.9 release allows you to further automate your invoicing process, but we've also added more detail to the invoicing process. And for more, I'll give it to Alyssa here.
Thanks, Liam. So, as Liam alluded to, we're able to break out the details on an invoice at the document options level. So you can have the global defaults or per customer if that's what you'd like. So, jumping in here for Denver Deli Meats, I'll go ahead and select the customer invoice. This feature is available for the customer rate and load confirmation, customer invoice batch, as well as customer rate and load confirmation. For demo purposes, I'll go ahead and just select customer invoice. And then you can see here, you can either select to show freight and fuel details, freight and fuel notes, as well as accessorial details or accessorial notes that were available in previous releases. Hopping into a load, you can see I have a customer quote here that has a net freight charges rate entry per pound, and it's a 10,000 pound shipment, so the total is 3,000. A fuel surcharge rate entry per mile, so it comes out to about $1,000, and a liftgate pickup that's per hundredweight for a total of around $200. If I go ahead and go to the invoice, you can see at the bottom we have a new standardized UI that will break out all of the details similar to what you see in the FQA on the customer quote. So you'll see the units, the quantities, as well as the unit price in total. This will be on all of the invoicing documents as well as sent on the EDI 210s for the customer invoice transactions. So that's our invoicing PDF enhancements. I'm going to switch over to our new zone enhancements, which is ease of use enhancement to enter zones in a faster way for you. So one of the best parts of this features is you can now create a mixed zone. So I'm going to create a zone for, say, the Midwest region. So I'm going to select a couple of the states, and because I'm biased, I'll go ahead and do Illinois and then Wisconsin here. Well, maybe not because it's at the bottom. So how about Iowa? Then I'm going to go ahead and select some zip codes. So another enhancement for the zone entries is you're now able to enter ranges. So here I've got a range of Wisconsin zip codes, and then you can also enter zip codes separated by a comma. So I'll go ahead and do that. And lastly, you can exclude certain regions from that zone. So since I have Illinois here, I'm going to go ahead and do an exclusion for a city. So say your carrier handles Illinois, but they don't go into the metropolitan area for Chicago. You'll go ahead and select Illinois and then type in Chicago here. Basically, again, this will exclude Chicago from returning for that zone. So once I save this, you can see that all the zones that I created are now broken out without having to individually type out each item in the zone. Again, just saving you time and a lot more efficiency in your zone entries. So with that, that concludes all of our demos, and I'll hand it back to Dave for the Q&A session. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Liam and Alyssa, for the demos. A lot of exciting stuff here. And as everyone that's on the call can imagine, we have a ton of great documentation on the RLC for everything from release notes to knowledge articles, so on and so forth. So, plenty of things to see and read about there. So I'd certainly encourage everyone to get out there and take a look at that. And then again, just as a reminder for upgrades, I know everybody's always excited about upgrades. If you do have, or when you're ready to do your sandbox upgrade and production upgrade, as always, reach out to the help desk at help@revenova.com. And in your email request, or excuse me, in the install request, the subject should be 7.9 install request. So let's move on to the Q&A. We have a large list here of questions, and then the good news is we have about 20 minutes left, so we should be able to get through a lot of these. So why don't we just plunge right in? I'll be kind of being the moderator here and asking the questions, then calling on Liam and Alyssa to answer for the ones that they know. So as we go, the Q&A is still open, so feel free to ask questions if we make a comment and something comes up based on the feedback we give. But like I said, plenty of time left to answer questions. So without further ado, let's dive in. So the first question on the list here, will the Performance IQ tool also include custom batch jobs? I think for that, I'm going to toss it over to Liam.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. To answer your question, at the moment, it only encompasses the Revenova batch jobs. Reason for that is because part of that Performance IQ feature is that we at Revenova also see the performance of those batch jobs so that we can help out and jump in when there might be some help needed. So we don't currently see your custom batch jobs, but thanks for mentioning that and thanks for asking.
Yeah, and it's an interesting idea. I could certainly see as a future product enhancement the ability to define a list of custom batch jobs that you would want to see in the tool. So you're already getting good ideas for future product releases. So.
Absolutely, make sure that if you don't, or if you haven't already, enter that one, and we can document that and work on it for a future release.
Yep. All right, next question related to markup groups. So the type field on the markup groups. Question is that field going to be a mandatory selection?
Yes, so I'll take this one. It is a mandatory field on the markup group, so you will have to select either freight, fuel, or accessorial. You can create, as I mentioned in the video, a blanket. So say if you have a fuel and you want it to apply to all your fuel surcharges, you would just select that one markup type and then leave the lookup field for fuel surcharge blank. And then for backwards compatibility, again, as I mentioned in the video, we'll create 3 separate markup groups for you so that you don't have to go backwards and do that manually.
Awesome, thank you, Alyssa. Let's keep going. Next question, can we generate barcodes for completed shipments? I'll let you take that one.
Yes, you can. The only requirements to generate the barcode is if the carrier service is on the load, as well as a pro number. So if you change that pro number or the carrier service is changed, the status of the load does not matter or affect it. Well, it has to be assigned, so it can be a completed shipment. Yes.
Excellent, thank you. All right, the next one, this is one that I'll take. So next question related to documents, document visibility within the portals in the system. So the question is, can we restrict some documents in the portal? For example, not showing carrier invoices to customers. Obviously, we don't want to do that. So the short answer is yes, you can. And what we've kind of implemented is the reverse of what exists today, right? So today, basically all of the documents you have to manually share unless you've coded around it, but all of the documents you have to manually share in the portal. And so now what we've done is we've kind of exposed all documents. So if there are certain ones that you don't want to expose, you would either have to manually, uncheck the visibility, which admittedly is not a great solution if you're, doing a one-off situation. So the recommended practice for portals with this release and beyond is to actually remove the files and attachments related list from your portal. So theoretically, there shouldn't be any need to have that files related list on the portal anymore, because all of the documents that you need, like PODs and the invoice and the BOL, all of those are exposed with the tools that we built without the need for the files related list. So that answers that one. Let's continue. Next one. What defines a job running too long? So this must be also related to the performance IQ. So the question looks like two-part question. What defines a job running too long, and how is the average processing time calculated for the batch jobs? So Liam, I'll probably toss that to you.
Yeah, so I mentioned that there are three things that can flag a batch job as something that needs attention, and one of those was that the job is running too long. In performance IQ, that means it's been running for longer than 24 hours. The other ones I mentioned were that it did not run as scheduled. That means it's more than 10 minutes past its expected runtime. And the last one is that the batch job is just not running. So this is that's a great question. The average processing time, Abel, I hope that answered your question, but if there's more that you're looking for on that one, go ahead and email myself or product@Revenova and I can answer that for you, but hope that helps.
Good deal. Thank you, Liam. Then moving on to the next one. Will the PDF attachment generated, oh, sorry, my screen just dropped down. I'm sorry, find that once more. It keeps moving, sorry folks. Will the invoices be sent in an individual email per records of the customer or batch into single email with multiple PDFs for each record included for that customer?
Yep.
Yeah, so Liam, could you take that one and maybe rephrase the question? I feel like I butchered it a little bit there.
No, you did great. There's a setting on the customer transportation profile that dictates whether the invoices or a batch of invoices are lumped together into one document when they're sent via email or split into individual emails with multiple PDFs. So it looks like Abel's asking whether that automated invoicing process follows that setting, and it does, is the answer.
Gotcha. Excellent. Okay, next, an easy one. So there was a question about some of the customer invoice settings. The question is, are these settings specific to non-accounting seed users? The answer is yes. So anytime you see the customer invoice or you saw the customer invoice table in the demos here, those are non-accounting seed specific. Okay, next one. Would we have visibility on the emails or invoices that are sent? If a customer were to claim that they did not receive an invoice, how can we prove that it was sent? So and this is actually true of all emails that you send from the system, when you send an email from Salesforce, that email record gets associated with, I think it's the parent record that you're sending it from. So the short answer is yes, you will have visibility to those emails, and it somewhat depends on where you're sending the email from. So the short answer is yes. Long answer, we can, feel free to reach out if you have more specific questions on that one, and we can address those there. Anything to add? There.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's great. And like Dave said, if there's more specific cases you wanted to check on, that'd be when you want to reach out.
Right. Okay, next one. Still 10 minutes, so plenty of time. Keep asking your questions. These are great. If you have a customer invoice day defined as Monday, and the customer invoice automation job runs every X number of hours, would only one batch of invoices for the customer go out on Monday for that customer, or would multiple go if there were more customer invoices available the next batch process runtime, and it is still Monday? So Liam, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, great question here, Jeff. So the answer is you are able to send multiple batches for the same customer as long as the invoice date is today and the status is approved and the batch job is running frequently enough to scoop them up. So if your batch job is running every 3 hours and between the last time the job ran and 3 hours from now, another handful of invoices for the same customer are approved and ready to be sent, the job will scoop those up and it will be sent. So short answer, yes.
Okay, next one. Do those customer invoice fields on the PDF only apply to the TMS accounting or also apply to accounting seat billings? Specifically looking for accessorial notes added to accounting seat billings. So do one of you guys want to take this, or I can add my commentary?
Yeah, so currently we don't include the accounting seat billings with those breakdown fields and specifically the notes. There is a PI in the system asking for this enhancement. So if this is something you're interested in, definitely put that in. But if you have any custom documents, you are able to use those fields on your custom documents now. But that was all I had.
Yeah, that was going to be kind of what I also was going to suggest. So I know a lot of you guys on the phone have your own invoice PDF documents. So if you have those, the fields are available, so they can be used in those invoice PDFs. The non-accounting seed, they kind of come out of the box now with the standard native Revenova customer invoice. The accounting seed, I guess native customer invoice can be adjusted. But that one might require a little bit more digging into. So yeah, I guess reach out if you have more questions about that, please. Okay, next one. Where can I access the playback for this recording? Oh, an easy one. So the playback will be uploaded to the RLC. And if you don't have access to the RLC, reach out to help@revenova.com and we can get you access to there. But the recording of this and the notes and documentation for 7.9, they'll all be there up on the RLC. And then the next one is, can you please summarize the RFP updates briefly? I'm not sure that we could do that briefly. There's quite a bit to the RFP updates. So if you missed that part of the demo, we actually did walk through that. So feel free to watch the replay of this or read the release notes. Okay, next one, related to the auto invoice feature for customers. And Liam, this is probably gonna be you. If a customer has a required document, say a POD that is needed for invoicing, will the invoice be excluded from sending until the POD is present? Ooh, that's a very good question.
That is a very good question, and it's a little probably lengthier than we have time to answer today, but I will well, actually, that is from anonymous attendee, so I would encourage you to reach out to product@Revenova, and I would be happy to answer that for you and point you in the right direction of some more detailed documentation there.
Yeah, because I think the point to that one would be it only grabs the approved invoices. So theoretically, you're not going to be moving the invoice to approved until all of your PODs have been received. So kind of you get there indirectly by nature of it not being approved to be grabbed into that invoice job. So I think that's probably the answer there.
Exactly.
Okay, next one. Will 7.9 share prior documents in the portal that weren't previously shared? Basically, can it catch up our documents that weren't shared and we wanted them to be shared? Share prior documents. I'm not sure I understand what that means. Do you guys?
So previously, I guess since it was a manual process, they had to select which documents were being shared. So once they upgrade, will that happen automatically?
Gotcha. Really good question. I don't think, so maybe I shouldn't say this. I was gonna say, I don't think it will update previous documents, but that's something that we could certainly follow up on and find out. I think it's basically new documents that are uploaded moving forward, not old ones. It's trigger based, so new ones moving forward, yes, but old ones perhaps not. Again, probably shouldn't have said that. We'll have to follow up and we can get back to you on that.
Okay. A few more here. We got about 5 minutes. How do we handle batch failures from load jobs? Not sure I'd follow that one. Oh, maybe, oh, it's probably related to Performance IQ. So does Performance IQ show failed jobs? And if so, then can we run the failed jobs again? But I think the answer is yes. You know, it shows not scheduled, not run. And then basically on the home page, you have the batch process review widget that allows you to reschedule it right from the same screen.
Yeah, and that widget also shows failures, I believe.
Yeah, it does.
So.
It does. So yeah, a couple different ways to see that, and then you know rescheduling it from the batch processes widget. Okay, so we got 5 minutes and a handful more questions. So let's keep going here. So next one, how does the system know that an invoice is ready to be sent in the automatic invoice process? So I guess Liam, you've kind of already touched on that, but you want to maybe reiterate?
Yes, yeah, it's a really cool feature and centers around the invoice and whether it is ready to go out to the customer. And the criteria it looks for are that the status is approved, that's a new status in our invoice status field, and that the invoice date is today. I mentioned that there's a setting now to dictate which day the customer prefers to be invoiced. So those are the two big pieces that go into whether an invoice is scooped up in that customer invoice batch job.
Excellent, thank you. And that actually relates to the next question that we have here, which is there any way to prevent more than one batch of customer invoices going out on a single day, besides changing the frequency of the batch job to more than 24 hours? I suppose the creative way would be don't set the invoice to approved. So if you have, if you're trying to send out invoices once a day and you don't want to send any more that are still on the same day, then keep the rest of your invoices that day in an unapproved status, or pending, or whatever.
Right, or I mean, schedule it so that it starts at 8 a.m. The first run of the day is 8 a.m. The next run's 24 hours from now, tomorrow at 8 a.m. And the invoice day for that customer is a week from today.
Right,
right. It'll skip over those invoices for the rest of the day and wait until the next batch run.
Yep. Cool. Thank you, Liam.
Yep.
All right. A few more. How often will Performance IQ push me email notifications? Liam, we'll let you take that one.
How often will it push email notifications? Great question. We do not want to spam your email notification user with constant notifications that you need to pay attention to limits and batch jobs. Instead, we are going to send you a notification once per day as long as the issues persist, unless something new is added to the list of issues. So if your limit for insert limit here is causing issues, then we will let you know once and then not again for 24 hours unless another limit gets added to the list and we need to tell you, hey, there's actually more to pay attention to.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, 2 more minutes. We'll try to get through a couple more here that we have time for. Is the barcode feature limited to LTL carriers? Alyssa, we'll let you take that one.
No. So as long as the barcode type field is set on the carrier TP and they accept either code 39 or 128, you can use the feature for that carrier.
Awesome. Awesome. Next one. This is an important one, I'm sure, from a lot of folks. Can you upload mixed zones using the data import wizard?
Yes, you can.
Excellent. Excellent.
Easy one, but yes.
Yeah, no, we get a lot of questions about uploading in mass, so using the data import wizard for that is certainly a benefit. All right, we got 1 minute, so I'll try to get through perhaps one more. Let's see. For the customer invoice automation, if I have a customer that gets invoiced via EDI, will the batch job automatically send those via EDI? And then a follow-up to that is, if I have multiple invoices for a single customer, some of them are EDI, some of them are email, will both groups of invoices be handled correctly according to the appropriate method? Liam, we'll let you take that one.
Yes, the short answer is yes. It is respecting that billing method setting on the customer TP.
Awesome. So it'll do and both at the same time as well. You got email and EDI in the same batch. It'll send the email ones and the EDI ones correctly.
Exactly. Yeah, those are the two methods that it supports. And so it'll look at, it's smart enough to look at each invoice and decide how is that supposed to get sent out? Is it EDI, is it email? And it follows the existing EDI and email processes. The automation just happens upstream.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right. Well, that brings us to the top of the hour. So on behalf of the entire Revenova team, thanks for your time and attention here today, and enjoy 7.9. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
Thank you.